Thank you so much for coming to check out another episode of the Stashcast, where we have interesting conversations with interesting people. Stashcast is brought to you by Needle. What if you could use data and analytics to predict real estate transactions before they occur? You can with Needle. Come check it out at Needle, NEDL.us to learn more. All right, today I'm excited. Another non-multifamily, Tanh Truong. Tan, thank you so much for coming to join us. We've had, I guess, a limited amount of interaction so far. So maybe if you could start out with who you are and what you do, and we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, perfect. Stash, pleasure to be on here. Thank you for having me. So I guess I'll give a little small background of where or who I am, I guess. I'm a Cincinnati native, grew up on the west side of Cincinnati. For the local Cincinnatians, I grew up in Price Hill, was there until probably roughly 10 years old or so. And then I moved a little bit more west and pretty much a true west sider to my quarter. I went to school for pharmacy, pretty much to appease my parents. And if there are any of the listeners out there or have immigrant parents, you'll know exactly where I'm coming from. Originally, the thought was to go to medical school, but that shit was just too long. So I decided to take the shorter route in pharmacy. I graduated pharmacy school back in 2007. I roughly practiced for about 3 years or so. And during my practicing years, and even throughout pharmacy school, I was very interested in finance, learning about how investing works, and pretty much just hoarded all this information that I could pretty much get my hands on via podcasts, books, internet blogs, what have you. You name it. If it's free, I got my hands on it. And so I gathered all that knowledge and finally pretty much pulled the trigger on my first real estate investment in 2018. And from there on, I had partners in the residential side. These were small multifamilies and single families. So I did everything from flipping, burring, wholesaling, you name it. I'm pretty sure I touched it. Aside from, I really didn't do any sub-twos in the residential realm, nor did I do any note investing in the residential realm and or commercial. But did that for roughly, call it 2 years or so. And then partners and I just started butting heads. We split up and pretty much just sold our entire portfolio together. And that was the point where I transitioned into commercial real estate. I found a mentor who was local, learned everything that I could from him. And from there, just did not necessarily did my own thing. I gathered a lot of partners along the way as well to partner up on a lot of these non-residential commercial deals. And when I say non-residential, I'm talking about retail, office, industrial flex spaces. My focus primarily lies in retail and flex spaces. Hopefully that gave you guys a good synopsis of how it all started up until now.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Why didn't you like pharmacy school? Why didn't you like being a pharmacist? Some people, that's their dream and what they want to do.
I'm not going to lie, pharmacists and even healthcare practitioners in general, they make a very modest income. As soon as I graduated, I was automatically in the six-figure bracket, right? And there's not a lot of bad things I have to say about pharmacy. I think it's a great profession. I think having the ability to help patients and people in general is a noble act. However, I knew that I wasn't going to be stuck there forever because I didn't want to work 60 years or 70 years doing something where I would be limited in. So when I say limited, my salary would be capped at X number, right? Let's say 150 grand, let's say, or 170 grand, whatever the hell it is, right? And you get very marginal increases going up to that point. And you probably don't even get to that cap until you're probably 30 years in to that profession. So the amount of input does not necessarily correlate with the output that you're getting, right? And I always loved my freedom. So I knew that I wanted my money to work for me. So I wanted to figure out a way to leave that W-2 or make some type of passive income that replaces that W-2 income, because I knew for a fact that I was not going to be there forever.
Yeah. I think that transition from the W-2 to full-time investing and living off of that is a challenge for people. How did you do that?
I would 100% agree with you. It's definitely a challenge for people. A lot of people have asked me this, right? And I don't think there is a right answer. How I did it was that I was lucky enough or fortunate enough to be in my position where my expenses are not very high. And with the modest income from my W-2 and the previous investment that I did, I had a good reserve saved up where I could have not worked for 5 years or so, maybe even a decade, without getting one single paycheck. A decade might be exaggerating, call it 5 years. So I had enough saved up to cover all these expenses that I could go out, quit my W-2, and actually pursue something that I actually really liked. Now, the other good thing about that is that, or the fortunate thing about that is, if I were to fail, if for some reason all these investments just went down the shitter, I had a degree to fall upon. I still I'm active with my licenses. I was licensed in 4 states. I'm only licensed in 2 now, but luckily those 2 are local, right?
Yeah.
So if everything went down the shitter, I still have the ability to still work as a pharmacist and make, once again, a modest income. So I'm not going out starting at whatever, $14 an hour, $15 an hour, whatever that is nowadays, right? So I think a lot of things were lined up correctly for me to have a little bit of a safety net in order to do what I did.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right. Do you think that some of your training that you got through the formal education has some of that, even though it's not directly applicable, what lessons from that were you able to carry forward into your new ventures?
So if we look at it from a real estate perspective, I think when you look at a patient in general, it's very similar. Patient and the medicines that are involved in their treatment, it's very similar to real estate. Drug-wise, maybe a little bit different. However, and the reason, what I mean by that is that when you look at a patient or the human body in general, you see all these different systems that work together in order for the body to do what it does or to function how it does, right? When you look at a commercial building, it's pretty much the same way. What does the exterior brick do? What does the foundation do? What does the HVAC do? What does the plumbing lines do? All different systems to pretty much help this one main building or this main...
The body.
Yeah, the body. But so that's, I think, what I've in treatment, when we look at treating a patient, we look at all of these individual systems in order to maximize care, right? And I think that kind of translates a little bit into commercial real estate. However, I can't tell you, I'm not the greatest handyman, nor am I a contractor. So when I look at these things, there's a lot of times that I'm still like green with, I don't know how to fix this shit.
Yeah.
Call somebody that's a professional. I have an idea of how it works, but that's the only kind of translation that I do get. Now, to go a little bit further, I think with where I was working or practicing, I was in the community setting. So before you actually get placed at a particular store, you're actually bouncing around a lot. So I think you have to be able to work well with a lot of people that are around you, different types of personalities, just different types of people in general. And I think with that, it really helps with partnerships. You have to be able to read people. You have to be able to understand what they want, and you have to be able to figure out if your interests are aligned to actually get married to them and partner with them for the long run. And that's just a metaphor. I know in the pharmacy realm, you're working with them for maybe months at a time, maybe a couple weeks at a time. Whereas in a partnership, the marriages last a little bit longer.
Yeah. How do you go about courting investors and capital?
I don't have a specific way to do it, and I don't think I'm the best one to ask about this because I'm a shit salesman. I'm a terrible salesman. I'm brutally honest, and I am unapologetically myself. I think the best qualities about me when I talk to investors is that I am honest and I don't bullshit in any particular way. I cuss a lot. I tell them that in the beginning. So if they get offended, this conversation might not work out. And a lot of times my conversations don't happen in a professional setting. I don't meet investors in professional settings. I meet them at conferences. However, I meet them at a bar.
Mm-hmm.
At a bar, for me, once you have one drink, two drinks, whatever, let's just say one drink. After one drink, you can actually tell who that person really is. And just a little tiny drug effect of alcohol will tell you who that person really is. And fortunately for me, after one drink or 10 drinks, I'm the same person. Maybe a little bit more slurry in my words, but I'm still the same guy. I'll tell you the same shit you would hear as if I had zero drink. And that's where I think I've gotten the most people that have trusted and believed in me. Once again, I think it comes down to being you through and just not carrying that bullshit hat with you.
Yeah, I think that what you're keying on is authenticity, and people like that and appreciate it and want to see it. And I tend to be a little bit rough around the edges, I think, sometimes. And I've read things on, social media, as well as going way back, I have a psych degree. And even in that, I think I remember studying that those who swear tend to be more authentic and genuine. And I think if that's what you want in a partner, or if that's what you value, there it is, shines through.
I've definitely heard of that before. I just can't remember where I found it, but
Same.
yeah, it's 1000% true because I cuss like a sailor, and when I'm drinking, it's even worse.
So you mentioned a little bit at the top so you started doing just whatever you could get your hands on. Is that what it was? Or like you said, fix and flips. You did do wholesaling. How does wholesaling work? I don't understand that at all.
When I said I did everything I could get my hands on, it was more acquiring information. So anything resources wise that were free, I was getting my hands on. I was hoarding all of this, right? Every single podcast, real estate related or investing related, any book that I could get my hands on, blog post, etc. Any person that I met at a networking event, I try to steal their time, right? That's what I meant. Now, to answer your question about the wholesaling is just another way of saying you are a middleman, right? So in the real estate realm, you got three parties. You got the seller, you got the middleman, who's the wholesaler, then you got the end buyer. Mm-hmm. So three parties. Now, Stash, let's say in this situation, you're the seller. I'm the wholesaler, and I found John, who's the end buyer. Stash, you want to sell your house to me for $50,000. I say, okay, I'm going to buy your house for $50,000. I give you an agreement, written up, buying Stash's house for $50,000. Now, on top of that, I'm going to have another agreement with John to sell Stash's property or my interests in Stash's property to John. And I'm going to sell it to John for $60,000, or I'm selling it to him for a $10,000 fee, is essentially what it is. Now, if you look at it from a non-real estate example, it's just like you look at Costco. Costco's like the biggest wholesaler out there, right? They have connections to the sellers of the products that they're selling. They put it in their warehouse, and they're selling it to you, the end buyer, for a margin. Same shit, but in real estate.
That line of business has always baffled me because I've always been a licensed either salesperson or broker. And so it never really computed. I get it. It's doing the same thing, but different. So you did some of that wholesaling. you said small multifamily, and then you decided to liquidate with your partner, part ways. Why didn't multifamily is a popular product? Why didn't you decide to stay with that?
One, it was, if you're talking about the original portfolio, it was already entangled between all the partners in there, and we just wanted to walk our own ways. So liquidation was pretty much the best option for us at that moment in time. Secondly, the other option would have been to buy out the other partners. And I think, I don't know I don't remember what our capital position was like, but for some reason we were. Now, if you're talking about after the fact of selling the portfolio, why I didn't stay with multifamily, I think I got two parts to this answer. So the first part is that, one, I'm not against multifamily investments. I just think that historically, probably over the past 5 years, maybe a decade, it's gotten super saturated to the point where all the numbers have gotten incredibly competitive. They're just, the cap rates have compressed so much and everybody wants to be in multifamily. And I think the main reason is because it's so much different than non-residential commercial. Because I'm not saying every property is the same, but I'm saying a lot of the operations are very similar to each other. When you buy a property, you look for these value add potentials, right? You bring a management team in, you work over the operations in order to optimize the operations in order to improve NOI. Now, when you do that, all your leases are the same. You have either month-to-month leases, or you have yearly leases for residential tenants, right? All your lease templates are going to be pretty much the same damn thing. They're going to have the same language. You know exactly what your lease says for that particular tenant. If they mess up one thing here and there, if they break a clause, whatever, you already know because your lease is always the same. The second reason why I steered away from multifamily is because I was sick of multifamily tenants. In the commercial, non-residential commercial realm, what I've seen is that these tenants they're business owners, and I love having the conversations with them. I love learning about what their struggles are in the business right now. How are they optimizing their marketing? How are they doing whatever in order to succeed? And coming from a business owner myself, I see some of those challenges. I try to help them where I can, and just sharing stories left and right about owning a business, right? Because at the end of the day, you are a partner with your tenant. You're not just their landlord. You're helping them. Your main goal is to help them succeed too, because if they don't succeed, you don't get rent. If they just went out of business tomorrow, your rent's down the shitter, right?
Yeah.
With residential tenants, I can't say I'm sick of them, but I've gone through a lot of residential tenants to the point where it's non-favorable, if you will. And I don't know if I've ever shared this story with you, Stash. Maybe your audience will get a kick out of this. Is that okay? Can I?
Hell yeah, let's go.
All right. So back when I was doing on the residential side of investing, we were, sending out direct mailers to wholesale property for marketing purposes, right? To either wholesale, flip them for themselves, keeping them as our own rentals, what have you. We bought this one particular property that was sight unseen. And the reason why we bought it sight unseen was because the seller pretty much had an unruly tenant. So the tenant was very unresponsive, didn't give him the keys, wasn't paying rent, all this other shit, right? So I couldn't even view the property. And closing day, we bought the property. We thought the numbers were just too good. I think we bought it for $28,000 or something like that. And it was worth, I don't know, $170, somewhere around there.
What was it, a house?
It was a house, yes. Single family house. So we bought the house. At closing, it might have been $23,000, whatever. But at closing, the guy gave me a couple $100 to change the locks because he didn't have the keys. The tenants changed the keys on him. Crazy. So took ownership, tried to communicate with this tenant. Same shit. No answering, evading rent, the whole nine. Even went to the house, knocked on the door, tried to talk to whoever was there. Nothing. Great. Filed eviction. Now, this is when COVID was happening, right? So going to court, there was a moratorium that hit that said we couldn't evict anybody for another like 30 days or something, maybe 60 days, something like that. So that's another 30 to 60 days with no rent. It's okay, we have to eat the bullet here. 30, 60 days comes by, filed it again, but this time it was approved. Got the sheriff scheduled, got the movers scheduled, everything's good to go. I went to the house that day, the scheduled day for moving / eviction, and the sheriff is getting this guy out. They moved all this shit out. I get there probably 15 minutes after the fact. All the windows were open, movers are in there. You could smell this house from the other side of the street. Like, it was fucking rancid. And it was bad. So I was like, whatever. They probably just stored some crazy shit in there or whatever. They had dogs come out, probably 2 dogs, probably another 2 cats, a couple hamsters, ferrets, just almost like a zoo. And I was like, yeah, that's probably why it smelled. All these pets are in there. They're probably pissing on the carpet, whatever. Done. I didn't walk in because it smelled that bad. I walked to the other side of the street now. Now I'm on the side of the street that's closest to the home, and it smells even worse. They got all this stuff out. Guys are in hazmat suits, right? One of the movers came up to me and he goes, man, you will not believe what is in that house right now. I'm thinking in my head, you just moved out pretty much half a zoo, a couple things here and there. What else could be in there? He goes, the kitchen is like one of the first rooms you walk in when you walk into this house. And in the corner, there's a 400-pound pig laying in its own shit. And on top of that, the kitchen has 6 inches of shit that's just been there for God knows how long. And I was like, damn, you gotta be fucking kidding me. So that's where the smell came from, but they called it environmental services came, got this pig out, and sure as shit, it was every bit of 400 pounds. It broke a ramp coming out, broke a ramp coming into the truck. It took a minute to get this thing out of there. And I still have not seen this house, right? Luckily the movers that we hired were also a cleaning crew, and they were able to clean everything up, and we essentially sold that house shortly thereafter, probably.
Did it still smell?
So after they got all the shit out there, I think it had some type of stench, but it was a lot better from what I remember than originally.
I thought you were going to tell me you found like the guy's dead body in there or something. I was like, oh no.
Oh man, this makes for a better story, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I've never had a house with a pig in it. And I don't think many investors, if any, has ever ran into a situation like this.
No, that's weird.
So that's residential for you. And I've been in commercial for, I don't know, call it 4 years or so. And I've not once seen a pig.
Unless you own a pig farm.
Unless you own a pig farm. Yes.
Okay, so we're leaving that behind. I'm just curious, what part of town was that in?
That was in, where was that? That was Northern Kentucky, Covington.
Oh, geez.
Yep.
Wow, so it wasn't even like out in the sticks or anything. It was
No. I was talking to the neighbors too that day, and they were like, what's funny is that I remember when that guy brought that pig in and the pig was just a baby. She was like, it was this big in your hands. That must have been a while ago, and that pig sure did not miss a meal because that thing is huge.
Did you ever talk to the tenant? Dude, what the hell's going on?
Oh, we tried.
And he yeah.
Nothing. And then the sheriff came, and that's when they had to pretty much shift everything. I don't know where they went. It's sad in those settings because
sure,
you don't have a roof over your head. But at the same time, I'm not someone that just comes out there and just straight up and kicking you out. You know what I mean? We were trying to work it out.
Yeah.
Hey, this is what your rent is. Hey, let's come to an agreement here with something, right?
Yeah, it sounds like there are a couple of things going on. The person probably has some mental health issues, and then they're also actively evading any attempts to cooperate and figure it out.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So what do you buy now? How do you find deals?
Now, once again, my focus primarily is retail strip malls and flex space. And flex space is like mixed use, right? So flex space is a combination of warehousing space with office space. How do I find deals? Pretty much your traditional routes. I talk to a lot of brokers on a weekly basis, just letting them know what our criterias are and just building relationships, whether it be online or in person or on the phone, and looking at listings left and right. So for those that are unaware, we have Crexy, we have LoopNet, which are the kind of two main commercial MLSs out there. So those, we look at deals there. I'm primarily focused in the Midwest, but I'll pretty much look at a deal anywhere aside from probably California and New York and maybe even Florida, because a lot of times those cap rates don't make sense. They're not in my backyard. So if there's a deal out there, there's a high chance that I won't even see it or know that it's a deal. Aside from that, I also look at residential broker listings, build rapport with other residential brokers as well, and just other investors at networking events. And I've also done some off-market direct mail to owners, cold calling owners as well. Yeah, I think those are the main avenues there for finding deals.
One of the things that Ash told me was that he loves to see a commercial deal listed by a residential agent, because it's a red flag that it's probably mispriced.
Most likely, yeah.
One way or the other. Yeah. And that was probably a family friend or maybe even the owner. And, oh, yeah, I know what I'm doing. You brought up brokers, being a broker. Curious. What do you see as the role of brokers? What do good brokers do? What are some mistakes to avoid, so to speak? I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
I think good brokers are the ones who are super proactive. They're from my experience, they're organized. They know the timelines that are coming up. They know the next steps. They know when to follow up, and they know the communication that each party has to have with each other. For example, if you're getting a tenant in, you have to know the timelines of when their DD period expires, or if they have an amendment, you have to update those things, right? Or if the negotiations are getting too long-winded, maybe a call would suffice. So once again, from my experience, the good brokers have been able to navigate these situations very well, and they already know the timeline of how everything is laid out. So without even me having to follow up, they're already on top of it. For example, we have a large national tenant going in one of our strip centers, and they've been under D for, their D period ends in September. They signed back in February. So we're roughly five months in. And there was one period where there was a stretch of probably 6 weeks where we're trading emails just back and forth. What the hell is going on? Just, can you give us an update? Crickets, no emails. And during those times, the broker, so we were already in communication with the tenant themselves, right? Or some representative of the tenant, not the broker. But our broker was already in this email chain, and he didn't say anything in the email, but he was proactive about it and actually called the other representative, the other broker for the national tenant, consistently, leaving messages saying, "Hey, I just need a goddamn update. Just what the hell's going on?" So I think without him, I think that 6 weeks probably would have been drawn out to double that.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, I think those type of brokers are very valuable and very needed. And I think if you're going on the selling side and the buying side, and in my example previously, it was more of a broker representing or getting a leasing assignment done for us. Now on the buying and the selling side, you would want a broker who is phenomenal at market research, or a team that can do that for you, that can get you a nice little package or an OM together without you having to do anything, because that's what you're hiring them for. They have to be communicative. They have to know their area pretty well. If not, someone on their team should. And they should be out there finding answers for you. It's a relationship that you're a partner on in just for this small span, whether you're on the buying side or the selling side. But they're there to help you pretty much every step of the way. And if you have questions, if you need your hand held, they should be there to do those things for you. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, when you take a listing, you take on the responsibility, in my opinion, to go out and represent your client and get the best price and terms. And so to do that, you've got to make sure that as much detail about the property and the operations and the upside and the potential challenges to the opportunity as possible. As you were speaking, I was thinking about some of the buyers that I'm working with on various different assignments. And do you ever sign like buyer exclusive agreements? I just got an email from our broker in Indiana, and you have to have a signed agreement with a buyer before you do any negotiation on their behalf. Do you ever say, hey, let's go out hunting and here's a rep agreement?
For the buying side.
Yeah.
So pretty much what you're saying is an exclusive buyer's agreement, yes?
Yeah.
I try to avoid those, but however, I do have one or two here and there. For example, I do have one for a broker in Indianapolis. If he finds a deal, if he finds a deal, we're pretty much working with him. And I actually do the guy, so he's very knowledgeable and he's just, I don't know. I personally, I think he's incredible because he knows the market super well and he gathers information that I wouldn't even have thought to gather and have done reports for us, all these things that I thought was above and beyond, if you will. But yeah, to answer your question, I try to avoid them as much as I can. I don't want to pigeonhole myself. So if one of those do come to your table and you believe that the broker is of value, then I think shouldn't be a problem to sign something like that.
Yeah, I think to be a good broker, you've got to have an encyclopedic knowledge of the market that you're working. Like, I know trade histories on deals, who bought it, when they bought it, plus or minus what they paid for it. You've got to have that knowledge so that even if it wasn't your deal, you've got to track your competitors and see what is happening with it then. And then you can have more knowledge and intel on it when you do talk to the current owner or the next owner. That's how I operate. So I guess, where are you trying to take this? Do you want to build a large organization, or are you just doing enough to make sure you have a comfortable lifestyle?
I would like to grow it as large as I can get it to. I love doing deals, so I'm always going to be looking for deals. Once again, I focus on the Midwest, but I'll look at deals pretty much anywhere. The deal piece of it, finding the deal and actually orchestrating the deal, is enticing to me because it's like kind of a puzzle that you're working through, mental simulation, if you will. And I love working with the partners that I have now. And if I get new partners, great. That just builds up new relationships. Yeah, as long as there are deals out there, I'm gonna continue to be looking. As far as how the operations side goes, I think that could use some TLC. I think if we want to get to a level that's competitive, being vertically integrated, the big piece of it. So that's going to be a challenge. It's just, there's a lot of moving pieces that we have to work through in order to get there. But once again, I'll always be looking for deals.
Yeah, if you want to be able to surround yourself with complementary skill sets. I've got on my team, actually, with the exception of the development deal I'm doing, I've got people around me, and even with that too, but my brokerage team, there are guys that are much better at certain things than I am, and we let them run with that. And with Needle, my partner is tremendous with the back end of things and the organization operation, and I'm like front end, and sales and things like that. Yeah. You want to be able to surround yourself with good people.
100% agree. And the complementary aspect of it is pretty big because there's a lot of things within the commercial real estate world that I don't like doing, most notably reading leases.
Yeah.
And thankfully, one of our partners is really good at that and actually enjoys doing that. So that's like a godsend. Like, I go to sleep as soon as I start reading a lease.
Yeah, me too. I'm not that good at that. Or yeah, I'm really great on the front end business development. Let's go kick up some dust and see what we can find. But
Yeah.
when it comes to the details of things, I'm a little dyslexic. I mix things up, and it's all about knowing and then recognizing what your strengths are. And it took me a
Yeah.
while to figure out that I wasn't deficient. I was just better at these things, and just how
Yeah,
it
a lot of
shakes out.
times you have to focus on what your superpower is or what
Yeah,
you're really good at, and you focus on that. Whereas all the other shit that you're not good at, you let somebody else handle that. Let
yeah.
them focus on that because they're good at that. Right? You don't pay a plumber to fix your roof.
You should pay a plumber to fix your roof for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let them focus on what they're good at.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about your development deal.
Yeah, sure. So I got into it because I sold an 8 unit that I had, and I'd done light value add on the deal. Turned, I think, 6 of the unit, bought it and sold it pretty quick. And I enjoyed orchestrating that and working with my contractor on it. And I met at Skytop and I sold that site to the developer.
Oh, nice.
And that relationship really spurred me into being more interested and really I took 2 years. I wouldn't say off from brokerage, but I took 2 years to really understand development and land and sites and things like that. And so I had this trade that I had done and I was going to do a 1031, but I didn't want to, I don't know. I wanted a challenge. You talking about mental stimulation. That's what I wanted to do. And as I was researching this particular property, I figured out it was in an opportunity zone. And I was going to try and do what's called a 1031 improvement exchange, where you can do a 1031 into a development deal, but you have to spend those funds within the 6 month time frame, that 180 days from when you close to your expiration date. And working with the city and permits and vendors and architects and all, there's no way that was going to happen. So I said, all right, this is in an OZ. I'm going to set up an OZ fund. And so that's what I did. I hired an attorney to do it, talk about leveraging other people's strengths. And so we bought the deal and it was a shell. It was stripped. It had been most of the old timber and framing had been stripped out of it and new floors had been put in. But like when I bought it, we were just using ladders to get up to the second and third floor. There was a brand new bar that opened right across the street. It's called Binsky's, greatest bar in town, especially on a Friday night. They do a meat raffle and it is just tremendous. It's so much fun. So, all right, I was like, all right, this is an up and coming neighborhood. There's a cool new hipster bar opening there. And I'm literally right across the street. And there's a lack of housing in general in this market, as well as across the country. There's a lack of quality house. So I said, I'm going to do this deal. And we're in the midst of it right now, working through some issues, but it keeps me up at night, or it wakes me up in the middle of the night is what it does. But it'll all work out in the end. It always does. But we'll have six one-bedroom apartments. And I'm going to put a mural on the side of the building that is the flag of Camp Washington, because I want something cool. I want people to be like, oh, I live in that building. And I was searching for what is that going to be. And then I saw the flag. I was like, that's cool. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I've tried to surround myself with good people, and for the most part have been, but I'm running it myself. I'm not doing the work because like you, I'm not that handy. I worked for my dad growing up. He was a contractor, and that was a great experience, but it taught me what I don't want to do, what I didn't want to do the rest of my life. So I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not good at it.
I'm with you there, man. So my dad was he was just a handyman. Could use
Mhm.
pretty much any tool out there. And what was crazy is that, so we were poor, so he couldn't afford a lot of tools, but he was so creative in all the shit that we did. If one tool didn't do the job, he would figure out a way with multiple tools in order to get the job done. And I thought that was the most fascinating thing ever, where you don't have the right tool for the job, and obviously you can't afford another $30-$40 to go get the tool, and you makeshift your own new tool in order to get the job done. And I think that part of it, I think, is carried on to real estate for me versus the tools, where every deal out there is different. And a lot of times these numbers don't work, especially in today's environment. All these sellers want cap rates that are absolutely ridiculous, right? They want a price that was pretty much the same as during the COVID times. And those numbers in today's interest environment just doesn't make any sense. So
Yeah.
a lot of times you have to figure out how to make the numbers work, how to make the investment itself work. And that takes a lot of creativity and a lot of just constructing, if that's not a word.
Structuring of the deal.
Makeshifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So do you have any examples of what you've done on deals like that where you've had to get creative? What do you do?
Let's see. I've had a couple sale leaseback deals, but I think the most creative way that I've done it, and I'll always ask in every single deal, one of my number one questions is asking whether or not the seller would do seller finance. Because if they will do seller finance, you can structure the terms in a lot of ways that make it fit what you need it to do. But in a real life example, I think the best creative example that I have for you is negotiating with the bank. We had a recent deal, it was a flex deal that in today's interest environment, I'm getting quoted anywhere from, call it around 8%, 8 to 8.5%, 25-year AM, and roughly 25% down. So 75% LTV, right? So with this particular deal, those terms from the bank did not work. It would have cash flowed very low, if you will, maybe $10,000 a year or something like that, some stupid. So what we did was we negotiated with the bank. Hey, what if? Because the previous owner on the deal had a loan on the deal that had a really low interest rate. I think it was around 4%. So I was like, can we assume that particular loan at 4%, and then for whatever the deficit is, we'll take a new loan out at market rate, or what you quoted us at, call it 8%. So they approved it at first, and the reason why we do that is because your debt service is now lower to where you cash flow more on the project, right? So that was approved, which was great, but they went to the board, went through these meetings, etc., and they ended up approving a different product where they've given us the entire loan, the entire new loan at 6% interest. And so it's essentially 200 bips under what the market is, which was ideal for us because now the numbers look phenomenally better.
So they gave you
cash flow a lot.
They gave you a blended rate then. They said, all right, we already have this one on the books. It's at 4. They don't want to take the deal at 8. So that's pretty good. That's a good deal.
Yeah. So we were able to get a 6% rate.
Yeah.
Where in today's market, you're going to be looking at roughly 8, maybe 8.5. And so do that. If you want to call it creative, I think it's creative to be able to negotiate with the bank to structure some type of deal like that. But at the end of the day, it makes the investment worthwhile. It cash flows well for the investors, and now there's a lot of plays you can do with that particular property, whether it be holding it for the cash flow long term or flipping the property now or in the long term, once again. But you have multiple outs, if you will.
Yeah. So you mentioned seller financing. I used to see much more of that when I first got started, offers of it or land contracts, things like that. But that is all but evaporated. And I'm starting to see thoughts of it creep back in, and it would take the form of, I haven't seen it done, but I got close on one, and he ended up just saying, all right, he was able to rate lock at a low rate. But they were going to the seller was going to take essentially a pref equity position for the difference between what the buyer I think it was like a $2 million retrade on a $50 million deal. So they're like, all right, we'll take a JV position or an LP position for that 2 million, and you have to pay us off in X number of years or something. I think it was like 2 years. Didn't actually end up going through. The buyer ended up just somehow it worked out. But usually, though, in today's world, if somebody asks me for seller financing, that almost immediately rules them out. Like, they're, in my mind, and maybe it's not the right way, but in my mind, I'm like, all right, this person is just not serious and not real, sharing my thoughts. I'm not saying it's wrong. I think just in my world, it's just not a whole lot of that. Because it's like, all right, if you need seller financing on a $20 million deal, how are you going to get it done?
I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to what the motivation of each party is.
Yeah.
And because at the same time, you're looking at a $20 million deal. If you're trying to sell it at a 6 cap and interest rates are at 8, you're already in the red when you purchase it. So how the hell does that make sense? Unless obviously you got 1031 money, you're just parking money to make 6%. Whatever, right? Whatever your preference is. But in my perspective, if the treasuries are giving you 5%, why the hell would I bother buying something for 6?
Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, I want to make it a win-win for everybody, right? Whether it be in partnerships, whether it be on a deal, right? If you want to sell a deal, I can't buy this at a 6 cap. Why? Because the bank's giving me 8.5%. If I buy this property today, I'm losing 2%.
Yeah.
And if I'm in the business of losing money, I'm not going to be in business for very long.
Yeah.
Honestly, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you right now. So we have to come to some sort of agreement where we can, if you want to sell your property for $20 million and I want to buy it, but I have to also profit on the deal in order to stay alive, right?
Yeah.
In order to keep doing what I'm doing now. So we have to come to that medium, whatever that is, whatever the terms are, in order to make it work. Maybe you want $20 million today. I can't give you $20 million today. I can probably give you $20 million over the life of this loan, right? So if you sell or finance me X amount of dollars, I give you $2 million, whatever, right? And I pay it off, blah, blah, blah. Over the life of this term, you're probably going to make $22 million. So if they're opposed to that, I'm just like, okay, so you don't want the extra $2 million. You just want the $20 million today. You have to figure out what they want and how you can make it a win. That's how I look at everything.
Yeah. Usually when we see a lot of deals with like assumable financing on it, that is a way to get a lower cap rate, especially if they've got a lower below market interest rate. That's a way to get a deal done. Or finding if there's enough of a gap. And this is the advantage of multifamily versus other asset types, but you can get a supplemental if there's enough of a spread.
There's tons of loans out there, government HUD loans or whatever, that are in favor of multifamily. I'm pretty sure there are HUD loans out there that give you a 40-year AM or a 40-year term.
Yeah.
And your interest rates are a lot lower than commercial. That's definitely a big positive of multifamily. I wish that was available for all commercial, but it's not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, HUD loans have teeth. They have teeth though, because I think distributions are limited to. It might have changed, but I think it used to be just twice a year, and then you've got to get an annual inspection, and it is fully amortizing. But you're dealing with the federal government. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are easier to deal with, but yeah.
There's a trade-off with everything.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, man. This has been fun. It's been really great. I appreciate you joining me today. If somebody is interested in speaking with you about maybe they've got a deal or would like to talk to you about partnering, what's the best way to get in touch?
I'm pretty active on Instagram. You can reach me at pro_ton, TANH, or reach me on my website, protonprofits.com. I also do have a podcast. I think Stash mentioned that earlier. It's
Yep.
called Wonton Wealth. Search for it on Apple or Spotify. I think all of my contact info is in the show notes as well. So those are multiple ways you can reach out. Happy to talk through deals. Happy to just talk about real estate in general.
This has been great, man. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, brother, you as well.
All right.